Hey there, and welcome back. Ready to dive deep?
Always. What are we exploring today?
Today, we're unlocking the wisdom of Carl Jung.
Ooh, Jung. Love him. And I see we're working from a list of insights someone sent in.
You got it. A whole list inspired by Jung's work, aiming to help us all conquer challenges and reach our full potential. Might not sound like much at first glance.
Ah, but that's the fun of it, right? Like those plain-looking pastries that turn out amazing once you dig in.
Exactly, we're going beyond the surface. So, quick recap for anyone new to Jung, he was all about the unconscious mind, really dove deep into that.
And what I find fascinating about this list is how it takes these complex Jungian ideas and makes them practical for self-improvement.
Yeah, it doesn't shy away from the tough stuff either. Like the very first insight dives right into how discomfort, even fear, can be like
Yeah,
guides.
guides, I like that. Instead of things to avoid, which is what we're usually told.
Right. Fear is usually seen as the enemy.
And this list, it flips that on its head, just like Jung did. It kicks off with, where your fear is, there is your task. Gives me chills every time.
It's so simple, yet so powerful. But how do we actually unpack that? How do we know what our task is when fear pops up?
It's the question, isn't it? And I think it demands some serious self-honesty. Sometimes the task isn't about reaching some big goal, but about facing something internal. A limiting belief, a past hurt, a bad habit, that kind of thing.
It's like that point in the list about work-life balance and self-care.
Yeah.
The source actually says those movements, while well-meaning, can sometimes make us, well, kind of mediocre.
It's provocative, for sure. But it made me think, how are we defining self-care? If it's about avoiding anything difficult, then yeah, maybe it is holding us back.
Like we're so busy making life comfy that we forget real growth happens outside our comfort zone.
Exactly. It's like building muscle. You don't get stronger by just existing, right? You need some resistance. Our emotional resilience, our ability to handle life's curveballs, it works the same way.
That is such a good analogy. So, listeners, think about a time fear stopped you from going after something you wanted. What about that fear was so paralyzing? What was the task hiding within it?
And more importantly, how could facing that fear, that discomfort, actually make you stronger, more resilient?
Big questions, right. And that leads perfectly into the next theme, taking control of your narrative. Jung had this great line, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, the world will tell you."
Oh, that's a chilling thought. Like, if we don't define ourselves, someone else will.
And we become almost like blank canvases, just waiting for someone to come along and tell us our own story. But we're not blank canvases, are we?
Not at all.
Yeah.
We've got the power to pick up the brush ourselves and paint the life we want.
Exactly. And this list emphasizes that. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. We can't always control what life throws at us, but
We can control how we respond.
yes. The source gives a great example of this. The author talks about being diagnosed with a mental illness and how at first they let that diagnosis define them.
It's so easy to do that, right? Let a label become our whole identity.
It is. But then the author had this realization that they had a choice. They could keep letting the diagnosis be everything, or they could take back their story.
It's like they reclaimed their power.
They did. They chose to focus on their strength, their resilience. What a powerful reminder that we're not powerless, even in the face of really tough stuff.
Absolutely. We always have choices. We really do. And, you know, that whole idea of choice, it takes us straight to one of Jung's biggest things, the unconscious mind. This source doesn't shy away from it either, even gives us a little warning, quote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate."
Whoa. Okay, now that's a heavy one.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how much of our lives, IS, actually controlled by stuff we're not even aware of.
That's what fascinated Jung. It's what he dedicated his life's work to, really understanding this hidden part of ourselves. And what's interesting is he didn't just theorize about it, he had his own intense experiences with the unconscious.
Full on, really, like beyond just studying it.
Oh, yeah. The source mentions how, in his late 30s, Jung started having these vivid visions, hearing voices, the whole 9 yards.
No way. So for him, it wasn't just academic. It was like he was living it.
Exactly. This period of intense inner exploration, some might even call it a crisis, that's when he started forming his big theories about the unconscious. He realized these weren't just random events, but messages from deep down.
Okay, but how do we wrap our heads around this unconscious thing? If we haven't had those kinds of intense visions, what are we supposed to understand?
Think of it like an iceberg. The tip we see above water, that's our conscious mind's thoughts, feelings, actions, all that. But below the surface,
There's way more we don't see.
exactly. That's the unconscious, a huge storehouse of memories, instincts, desires, patterns. Stuff we've picked up throughout life, even things we've long forgotten.
Okay, I get the image. But if it's so hidden, how do we even start making it conscious?
That's where things like meditation, journaling, even dream analysis come in. They're like those deep sea divers, helping us explore what's submerged.
Shining a light into the darkness, basically.
Exactly. And as we become more aware of these unconscious patterns, we can make different choices, break free from the stuff that's holding us back. And this ties directly into another key point from your source, letting go of the ego.
Now, I'm curious, how does knowing about the unconscious help us do that?
Well, a lot of times our ego, that sense of self, we show the world, it's built on those unconscious patterns and beliefs. We cling to certain stories about ourselves, certain desires.
Because it feeds our ego, like needing approval, needing to be in control.
Exactly. And the unconscious, it can keep those patterns going without us realizing it. But once we see those deeper forces at work,
We can choose differently.
yes, we detach from that ego-driven need for control. We start acting from a place of self-awareness, being more genuine. Jung called this whole process individuation, becoming our truest selves. And it involves a tricky concept, the shadow self.
Ooh, shadow self. Heard that before. Kind of spooky sounding. What's it all about?
It's not as dark as it sounds. It's not some evil twin inside us. It's just the parts of ourselves we've repressed, disowned.
Things that don't fit with who we think we are or who we want to be.
Exactly. Our anger, insecurities, fears, vulnerabilities, anything we've labeled unacceptable.
Okay, starting to see the link here. So, facing our fears, owning our story, exploring the unconscious, it's all connected.
Totally. All part of this big journey of self-discovery, of growth. Jung said it best. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. We can't just focus on the good and ignore the shadows.
We need to embrace it all.
Yeah.
Right? The light and the shadow to really grow.
Exactly. And it can be tough work facing those parts of ourselves, but it's also incredibly freeing because in those shadowy corners, that's often where we find hidden strengths, creativity, a deeper understanding of who we are.
Like those old maps,
Yeah.
The ones that say, here be dragons in the unexplored areas. What we fear might be lurking there could actually be treasure.
Love that analogy. And speaking of treasures, your source highlights a big one in its last points, action. It's easy to get caught up in the ideas, right? Spend all day thinking about this stuff.
But never actually doing anything about it.
Oh, yeah, I'm guilty of that.
We all are. And Jung knew it. Your source quotes him, saying, you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. Simple, but kind of stings, doesn't it?
It does. Got a whole to-do list of good intentions over here that'll prove it. So how do we bridge that gap from knowledge to action?
Well, first thing is, we don't need to overhaul our entire lives overnight. Trying to do too much leads to overwhelm, and then we end up doing nothing.
Baby steps, right.
Exactly. Identify one small action, inspired by what we've talked about, that you can take today. Maybe it's 5 minutes of meditation. Maybe it's finally writing down that recurring dream you've been having. Or just noticing when fear pops up, and instead of pushing it away, asking, what's the task here?
There you go, turning fear into an opportunity. And remember, be kind to yourself on this journey. There's no finish line, no right way to do it. Just keep exploring, keep questioning, keep putting these insights into practice.
Beautifully said. And everyone listening, we want to hear from you. What resonated with you today? What tasks are you being called to face? What one small action will you take? Let us know. We're in this together. Until next time, keep diving deep.